So you could be facing sort of different types of standards depending on different customers and what their demands are.
Oh, definitely. That's why it's even getting more complex. We're not just dealing with regulations, we're dealing with other standards or other company standards or other country standards.
So so just if I'm sitting here as a company, how do I decide, what to invest in? Because I might have one customer over here who says, well, we need these stuff, but I have, 85% of the rest of my customers doesn't need that. And then if each of them has a particular thing they want, it becomes very expensive to run the business that way.
Yes, and what we would do for a client like that is that we would take a look at what we call impact. We often take a look at regulations, or even if a client's going to do a process modification or something new that they're going to do. And you take a look at what's the impact, what is involved, and we go over with them what's going to be involved with implementing this particular thing that needs to be implemented. How costly is that for you? So that we would become part of their planning process and going over that. And then plus that, some of these regulations and initiatives, they may look different, but we know based on our experience, because we have years of experience, that there's a very common thread that runs through them. And oftentimes we can design this, and we do this with many regulations and regulatory requirements, design something for them that actually meets everyone's requirements, because it's really the same thing over and over again, just worded slightly differently. Okay, so,
Do you feel that the decisions are at the right level in companies? Are they at the top where they should be, or has it been pushed down to almost a compliance function that doesn't integrate with the whole business planning and profitability?
That's very insightful on your part, and I'm happy you asked me that, because that is one of the issues I see, that sometimes the upper level management is not as involved in the issue and they don't understand it, and they should be more involved in understanding the impact of their business. We often see companies will make a big change in their process and nobody has reviewed it for environmental impact, and it turns out it triggers a lot of things that could have been avoided. And that's what we come in. We try to get them to figure out a way to avoid having a lot of these regulatory burdens.
So as part of what you do, educate management, or at least get them going down the path where they're going to get the education about what they need to understand in their planning?
Yes. A lot of times for some companies that we're dealing with, especially more the mid-sized manufacturers, we're actually talking to the vice president of production or a general manager. And I would say, as the president of Environmental Strategy Consultants, I view that as a major part of my job, is really talking to management and getting them to understand what the issues are. And I even tell some of the contacts that I talk to, I say to them, get me a meeting with your vice president and I'll go over it with him and we'll explain it and we'll review it with you. And it makes things a lot easier, because then these things go much better when management is aligned. Everybody's aligned, everybody's on the same page.
So if we were to think about it, who would be, the ideal company that would engage you to figure out what needs to be done? Do you deal with mid-sized manufacturers, do you deal with large, do you deal with small, or do you deal with the whole gamut across there?
If I said the ideal client, that's a hard thing to have, but I would say that very small manufacturing companies, probably we cannot provide to them what we do. It would be more of a mid-sized company, and the ones that usually need us have some kind of significant operations that, as I said, generate waste and whatever, air emissions, chemicals on site. But we also do work for some very major corporations too. I mean, they have specialized needs. They have air permits, they have reporting needs. So I guess the ideal client, and that's a good question, the ideal client is one that really sees environmental and safety as an important function in their company. If they don't see it as important, then they're not a good fit for our company.
That makes sense.
Okay, so you might work for a Dow Chemical, but you might also work for sort of a mid-sized chemical distributor who has to worry about all the chemicals it's distributing.
Right, but the functions we usually provide for each type of company are different, and that's the thing. We customize it to the company. We customize our program to what's appropriate for that kind of company. we're going to recommend a higher level of program and accountability and maybe management and tools and all different kinds of things to somebody like a Dow than we would to a mid-sized manufacturer.
Right. Obviously due to budget size.
Yes.
So unfortunately, we're out of time tonight, and I'm sure we could go on for another half hour on this.